Okay, I think we have everybody admitted in from the waiting room right now. So we'll go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation, The Best Friends Approach to Dementia Care. This is the third webinar of a 5-part series, which will continue later on this month and also in September. I'm Joan Rettman, Area Community Relations here at the Gardens at Town Square, which is part of the Era Living family, and I will be your host today. Before we get started, I'd like to go over just a couple of notes that will hopefully make this a better experience for everyone joining. Your microphones are currently on mute. We've placed them to be on mute, and we've asked for you to keep them on mute throughout the presentation to avoid accidental interruptions. To ask questions throughout the presentation, you're welcome to go ahead and put those questions in the chat feature at any time, but we'll wait to answer those questions until we get to the end of the presentation. Lastly, we are planning to record this so that we're able to share this with others who were not able to join today. We'll begin recording now. Hello, I'm Joan Rettman, Area Community Relations Director at the Gardens at Town Square, which is one of 8 premier retirement communities. All are local here on the east and west sides, including Seattle, Bellevue, and surrounding neighborhoods. All are owned and operated by Era Living. Before we start today's presentation, I would like to share a little bit about Era Living Memory Care, which we offer in a secure, home-like environment at 2 Era Living retirement communities, Ida Culver House Broadview in Northwest Seattle and the Gardens at Town Square in downtown Bellevue. Both of these communities also offer independent living and assisted living on the same campus. We're excited to share with you that at our Ida Culver House Broadview location, we will be opening a beautiful newly renovated neighborhood of memory care in September. Reach out to our Broadview team to learn about waitlist opportunities for that location at this time. And one fact specifically about the Gardens at Town Square's memory care program that I also shared the last event is that we have been a reliable, steadfast resource here for almost 20 years now in Bellevue. Pictured on your screen right now is actually an example of a model apartment that we've set up within the terrace here at the Gardens at Town Square. And although we know that our memory care environment is quite lovely, beautiful apartments that are all private, as you see on here, beautiful courtyard filled with flowers and greenery, what makes it truly special are the staff and the way that they interact with our residents in such a personalized way. To create this personalized approach to memory care, both the Gardens at Town Square and Ida Culver House Broadview teams employ the Best Friends approach, which is developed by David Troxel and Virginia Bell, which you're going to learn about momentarily. And that leads me to introduce you to our speaker for today's event. We are honored to host David Troxel, who will be presenting on the Best Friends approach to dementia care today. David Troxel has become internationally known for his writing and teaching in the fields of Alzheimer's disease and long-term care. He has co-authored, along with Virginia Bell, 6 influential books and articles related to dementia care, including his new book, The Best Friends Approach to Dementia Care. And with that, David, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you, Joan. I so appreciate all your warmth and friendship and great leadership of Era Living. It's so nice to present for you all, which, a family-held company and really some very nice family values as you look at your work with residents. And again, happy to be here in August, and I'll get going here and share my screen. I see a few familiar faces in the box, so hopefully everything will go well with our technology here. All right. Oops, okay. Well, welcome everybody. It's so good to be with you today. I think a number of you have been with my previous, I think this is our 3rd webinar in the series of 5, if my math is right. And I know there's some people who've been in the entire series, but for those of you who haven't been, again, I'm David Troxel. I live in Sacramento, California. And I always feel such a heart for the Pacific Northwest because I am actually a graduate of a little college called Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington. I probably couldn't get in today. It's become very, very selective. But I have a lot of happy memories of my time in Washington State. My first roommate, Kevin, was from Bellevue, Washington. I still have a lot of friends in the Seattle area. So I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today, but thanks to Zoom, I can at least be with you virtually today. Today, we're going to cover a number of topics that I hope will be of interest for you. Even though we've covered this in a previous webinar, I think it's always great to give a quick overview of Alzheimer's disease and dementia. I'll talk a bit about Era Living's memory care and the best friends approach. And then I want to, always try to leave you with some practical toolkit kinds of things for those of you who are currently active caregivers, whether you're professionals or family members, and give you just a few basics from the best friends approach to dementia care, including the importance of making sure people who care for your family members know and use their life story, talk about communication, talk about some behaviors that can be challenging, activities, and then just share a few case studies. So again, hope this will be a helpful workshop as we get going today and talking about dementia care today. Now, again, from my very first webinar, you might remember this gentleman here, Dr. Alzheimer. This is the man who kind of started this whole thing off. He was working in Germany a little bit over 100 years ago. This was a time of great science. They had new stains, slides, microscopes. They had a growing fascination, perhaps with the birth of psychiatry, but a growing fascination about the human brain. Dr. Alzheimer was very fascinated and interested in what we would today call lunacy. Lunacy, what causes this aberrant behavior or challenges in thinking and memory and cognition. Many people back then probably thought that what we would today know be dementia, they might have thought it was witchcraft or something in the air or diet. But Dr. Alzheimer was a modern man, a progressive thinker who thought there was a link between the brain and the body, which of course we now know is true. Now he was doing his work when he met this kind of sad soul here, Augusta. Now, Augusta is certainly not the first person to ever have Alzheimer's disease. I think this disease goes back thousands of years. There's references to people developing dementia in some of the ancient writings from Greece and Rome. There's Shakespearean characters. Jonathan Swift in Gulliver's Travels wrote about a race of people who lived to be 100 years old, but become very forgetful. So we know this has been around a long time. But Augustus, I would say, is the first person described as having Alzheimer's. Dr. Alzheimer met her. Her husband brought her in, just like we might bring someone to the UW Memory Disorder Clinic these days. And she was presenting with this long list of challenges and forgetfulness. She was becoming confused, forgetting her last name, getting lost in familiar places, unable to do familiar tasks, burning things on the stove. And she had a lot of jealousy. She thought her husband was having multiple affairs when apparently he wasn't. And she had what we would today call delusions, these fixed false ideas. And it's very poignant, but we actually have Dr. Alzheimer's original case notes where we got this picture from. And basically she tells Dr. Alzheimer, I have lost myself. I have lost myself. So again, this is a face of Alzheimer's disease. Now, he followed her when she died, did an autopsy of her brain, and he found these things called plaques and tangles, the markers of Alzheimer's disease. And basically they wrote the article up, and of course in science you discover something and they name it after you, and that's why we have Alzheimer's disease today. Now, if we were together in person, I'd probably take 5 or 6 minutes and we'd actually talk about this picture because, I do think it's interesting to just look at this face, and I think you would all agree that Augusta is depressed, looks pretty malnourished, really woeful, certainly looks much older than 51 years old. And I'm going to put it out there that, she didn't have the benefits of modern healthcare. They may not have understood the power of engagement and how to work with her. She was in a lunacy asylum. So truly, she was depressed, malnourished, and not doing very well, even despite her dementia diagnosis. And this is a face of Alzheimer's disease, I dare say, even today. Again, this loss, disconnection, and loneliness, you might see it in skilled nursing or other settings late in life. But I hope from the basis of this webinar today, I can demonstrate to you that this doesn't have to be the face of dementia, that there's a lot we can do to lift the person up and have them be at their very best. Some of the things that I want to do a shout out to my friends at Era Living that they do with their contemporary memory care program and the Best Friends approach. Now, I mentioned this slide at the beginning of this series, and you know, it's fascinating how the news has kind of overtaken modern events, because I think in my very first webinar for the company Era Living, I mentioned that it had been almost 20 years since we've had a new drug approved for Alzheimer's disease. But what do you know? I can't use that catchy line anymore because, of course, we have a new drug that's been approved this year from Biogen called aducanumab, or Aduhelm. Now, I'm sure many of you, because I know you have a great interest in dementia, have been following this story. And sadly, this drug does not appear to be the answer that I think many people had hoped for. Aduhelm, there's been continuing controversy about the approval of the drug. The outside advisory board to the FDA voted, I think, 11-1 not to approve the drug, and strangely, FDA overruled them. Many people feel simply that this drug doesn't work or doesn't work all that well. In fact, many major health systems are announcing that they won't support the drug. There are insurance companies who won't pay for the drug. So it's a big, as my mother would have said, brouhaha of a lot of finger pointing and a lot of challenges. The US Alzheimer's Association has endorsed this drug, but I have to say that to me, that last bullet maybe says it all. Maybe the best news is that it may be the start of better drugs ahead and more drug approvals. A friend of mine who's very prominent in the Alzheimer's Association says, you know, David, the HIV drugs weren't very good at first either, but we got them going and it led to more things. So, you know, I'm hoping, being the optimist that I am, that that will be the case. But nevertheless, I'm not a physician, so I don't want to necessarily weigh in on, you know, whether you should try this drug or not, but I will say it's expensive. Biogen's priced this at $56,000 a year with a potential copay of $6,000 to $10,000 per patient, depending on your insurance. There's 3 MRIs you have to take during this process. If you take your family member to get the infusion, it's not a pill. You have to infuse someone once a month in an infusion center. Again, there's brain bleeds, lots of problems. So I have to say this would not be something I would choose for my mother. Now, the drug is also something that originally the FDA approved for all stages of Alzheimer's, but frankly, there's absolutely no research, none, zero, that this drug works for anything other than people who maybe have mild cognitive impairment or very early stage. So I'm sorry that I can't be the bearer of better news. Certainly some of you, if you're in a position for yourselves or your family members where you want to try this drug, that is certainly your prerogative because the FDA has given it a green light. Again, I do hope this is the beginning of sort of a breakthrough on this long drought of medication approval we've had. So with that note, let me just share a few more things about some basics of dementia before I jump into the best friends approach and give you some practical tools. Probably the #1 question I'm asked is, what is the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia? So just a reminder, again, a few of you may have heard me in my very first workshop discuss this in brief, but dementia is not a true diagnosis. It's way too broad. Honestly, it's almost like if you went to a physician nowadays and the doctor said you have cancer, we want to know what kind of cancer and where it is and how serious it is. And the word cancer, you would never accept as a final diagnosis. It's just too non-specific. Dementia is the same way. And so one way I like to think of this, my friend Carol Bowlby-Sifton from Canada first brought this analogy to my attention, that dementia is sort of like the word soup. There are many different kinds of soup: tomato, chicken noodle, mushroom, clam chowder. Every clam chowder is a soup, but not every soup is clam chowder. In a similar way, there's lots of kinds of dementia, I think over 100. Alzheimer's disease is a dementia, but not every dementia is Alzheimer's disease. We have Lewy body, vascular dementia, Korsakoff's related to alcoholism, frontal temporal dementia, et cetera, et cetera. There's even something called dementia pugilistica. Pugilistica, Latin for boxing or boxer, and people who've had dementia, who've had repeated blows to their head. Maybe someday they will rename that the NFL dementia because of that issue. So if you're having symptoms, again, get a good workup. There are possibilities, even if you're having memory loss and issues, that it isn't irreversible dementia. There are things like B12 deficiencies, others I'll talk about in the next slide. But you do want to get a good workup. And I will say that even though there may or may not, in a sense, be a definitive test for Alzheimer's disease per se, the UW Memory Disorder Clinic, any kind of neurologist, a geropsychiatrist, even a lot of family doctors still know a lot about the disease, and they can give a diagnosis with confidence because many of these dementias each have their own kind of flavors and personalities. We know it when we see it. When we rule out other things, we can get you that proper diagnosis. Now this is, in my kind of minstrel here, giving presentations all over the country as I make my rounds virtually or hopefully soon in person. This has become one of my very favorite slides, which was graciously lent to me by Dr. Michael McLeod, a terrific geriatrician, I think recently retired from UC Davis Alzheimer's Center. And I like his concept here that Alzheimer's disease doesn't travel alone, that Alzheimer's disease and many of these other dementias come with other challenges that actually are treatable, but left untreated can worsen impairment. So on the right, as a home-based caregiver, so many of you are family members, be aware of all these things. And of course, if you're a professional or family member, probably a professional caregiver, be aware of these things as well. That people with dementia might be taking their medications wrong, particularly if they're living by themselves. You know, they may be just taking 3 of this, 5 of this, 10 of that. You want to do a medication evaluation with a good pharmacist, your doctor. I believe it's important to get a person with Alzheimer's disease or other dementia on the most minimal medications possible, okay? They don't need to be on 27 things. Talk to your doctor. They have an irreversible disease if they have Alzheimer's, and sometimes things like baby aspirin, which by the way, can still cause nausea. Every drug has a side effect, are unnecessary. And do you know what the #1 cause of death is for people with Alzheimer's disease, according to Jeff Cummings at Cleveland Clinic, a very prominent neurologist? Aspiration pneumonia. So again, that swallowing reflex suffers. Alcohol can be an issue, stroke, depression, pain, malnutrition, hormone issues, thyroid issues, blood sugar. If your family member or patient or client has a higher blood sugar, you want to really treat that with diet, exercise, insulin, because again, people with elevated blood sugars can often, that can damage cognition, and it's treatable. Sleep issues, not having enough sleep is a risk factor for Alzheimer's and a problem. Hearing, visual impairments, B12 deficiencies, D deficiencies, and loneliness and isolation. Now today, I'm not going to talk a lot about pain or depression, but if these were handouts, maybe you can at least circle those, or at least figuratively circle those, because I have to say these are 2 things that always concern me when I'm looking at people with dementia, particularly if you're having behaviors that are challenging, okay? Pain. Remember that the person with Alzheimer's disease may not be able to tell you, they may not always be able to tell you that they're hurting, okay? So be aware that, if your mom or dad has a sudden change in behavior, your husband, wife, or partner has a sudden change in behavior, it could be pain. So check out their teeth, check out other kinds of issues. If it's something chronic like arthritis, sometimes maybe like a time-release Tylenol might help, but pain can spike behaviors. And depression. The Alzheimer's Association estimates that 40% of people who have Alzheimer's disease or other dementia may experience bouts of depression during their illness. And depression, it's very fascinating. There's even research dating back to 1952 that people who have long histories of clinical depression that's left untreated are at greater risk for cognitive illness. So you want to watch this and treat it. Treat it with activity, sunshine, maybe not always easy in Seattle, but activity, sunshine, being outdoors, productivity, time with kids and pets, engagement, very good for the brain. But of course, medication might also help there as well. I've used this analogy, I think, in one of the series that I've done here, but my mother's neurologist, my mother, Dorothy, passed away with Alzheimer's in 2008. My mother's neurologist, Bob Harbaugh in Santa Barbara, wonderful physician, he said, David, Alzheimer's disease is like a slow and lazy river. So sudden changes, you want to be aware that it's not that mom and dad went into stage 7B of Alzheimer's disease last night. What it means is that they're sick or something's going on. So watch for those sudden changes. So I just want to give you a little bit of a review, a little bit of a recap, or some information about just some basics about Alzheimer's disease and other dementia. You want to keep the person as healthy as possible to, again, keep them at their very best. Now we'll transition to talking a bit more about being an effective caregiver, some caregiving strategies, and I'll tell you more about the best friends approach. I will just always do a plug for my friends at the Alzheimer's Association. Great material on their website, alz.org. I'm also a fan of Mayo Clinic. They have some great material on their website if you Google Mayo Clinic Alzheimer's as well. So let me tell you a bit about this best friends approach that's been utilized now all around the world. It started in, I guess, in 1995 when my colleague and longtime writing partner and best friend, Virginia Bell, and I published our first book called The Best Friends Approach to Alzheimer's Disease. And that book came out about, 25 or 26 years ago, maybe almost 30 years ago. And it was the first book to, I guess I dare say, take a more positive approach to caregiving. We acknowledged the losses and challenges with Alzheimer's disease, but also said, if you're an effective caregiver, there are things you can do to travel this journey and actually make things better for yourself and the person with Alzheimer's. Now, here's my dear, dear friend, my beloved friend, Virginia Bell, and I was actually with her last week in Lexington, Kentucky. We're on her back patio, and Virginia is now 99 years old. She's still working. She's still helping organize things. Her phone rings constantly. She's chairing the Lexington Dementia Friendly Community Initiative, an amazing person. And I was just delighted to see her last week after almost 2 years of not seeing her in person because of the pandemic. So I thought you might enjoy this little Valentine from Lexington there. She's quite an amazing person. So this best friends philosophy, I'll just go back one more time. Basically, it stems from a book we've written, a number of other books, talking about how to travel this journey with the person with dementia, how to lift them up and be an effective caregiver. And we love it as a writer when people read our books and begin to adopt them. And so I'm very proud that Era Living is one of the companies around the world that has made a big investment in the best friends approach. It's their foundation or cornerstones of their memory care. And in 2020, I was delighted to make several trips up to Seattle and even I think in 2019 actually, and do some work with their terrific team and brainstorm and talk with their talented folks about how to implement this as well. So what is this best friends approach? Well, basically what we argue and say is that a person with dementia, with memory loss, they're living in a world that can be so challenging where they have a lot of losses and disconnection, frustration, anger. Many people with dementia know what's happening to them, know about their losses. And how do you treat that? How do you deal with that? Well, there isn't really a medicine that can make it better. I want to say ultimately the treatment for Alzheimer's disease is you and me. It's our approach. It's creating this therapeutic or healing environment and really lifting the person up. So what are some of the key elements? Well, empathy and understanding. I think part of that is accepting that the losses are real. If mother says President Eisenhower is doing a great job, instead of saying, mother, what's wrong with you? He's not the president. You're wrong. Let me tell you who's the president. It's Joe Biden. Instead, when she says President Eisenhower's in the White House, you say, Mom, I like Ike too. So again, being empathetic. Affection and warmth, because when we have a best friend, aren't we affectionate? Aren't we positive and supportive to them? And so people with dementia, I think they really can feel this nice energy. So again, trying to be demonstrative, even on those tough days, is part of being a best friend. Knowing and using the life story. We know a lot about our best friends, right? We know their birthdays, we know their careers, their attitudes, maybe their religious or spiritual practices. I always like to joke, I have several friends I know who would love a surprise party. I have several friends who would never speak to me again if I threw them a surprise party. So we know our friends and we adapt our approaches to them as we go through our lives. Now, in dementia care, the person may begin to not be able to tell you his or her own story. So it's very powerful when we can talk about them and discuss their situation. Maybe you have a hotel manager who now has dementia. He might still enjoy very much being asked about the menu, being asked about, decorating the house or your facility, wherever you are, or being reminded of some of his great achievements. Remember the time, Dad, when you managed a wedding for 1,200 people and they told you that only 700 would show up, and things like that. Again, knowing their life story builds connections, and you can often highlight some of their past successes. Communication. We know, sadly, that the language centers of the brain are damaged by dementia in almost all cases. But the person with dementia still has a desire to connect, a desire to communicate with the world. So what does a best friend do? Well, with my own best friends and my own friends, I text, I phone, I email, we get together for coffee, we visit. And so again, we have to take the lead here as a best friend to the person with dementia and really work on proactive communication. And of course, friends do things together, right? We're active. We go to a movie, I guess, before the pandemic. We have coffee, we take walks, we chit chat, we watch a movie together, we enjoy music, we do sports, we bake and cook. And so again, remember that activity is part of the therapeutic environment for people with dementia. And in my books, and I'm really proud that Era Living has embraced this concept, we talk about something called knack, K-N-A-C-K. I love this word as an old-fashioned word. The knack is the art of doing difficult things with ease or clever tricks and strategies. Again, how we kind of begin to be an effective caregiver. And you see, when you're a best friend to the person with dementia, it's not even about just being kind or nice. I mean, I hope we have that in our hearts, but it's also, frankly, a strategy, because let's say I'm a CNA in a nursing home or an assisted living building. If I just go in and boss the person around, they're going to push back, right? If I scare them, if I rush them, they're going to be in a very bad space and not cooperate. I might even get hit. But you see, when you're a best friend as a professional caregiver or a family member, you practice some of these things, it fosters a connection and trust. If that person feels that they like you, that you're on their side, everything goes better. So the best friends approach really helps that person feel safe, secure, and valued, particularly when he or she's engaged or involved in purposeful and fun activity. Everything goes better. And this best friends approach can actually reduce behavior that is challenging, and again, turn those no's into yeses, okay? So again, what are some of these key elements of best friends? Understanding dementia, okay? Learn all you can. We wanna be an informed caregiver. That's powerful. Using the life story, communicating, being creative around behavior, doing things together. And something we're not going to talk a lot about today, but something you can look up on my website, or Era Living, I'm sure, would send you out a copy, or in my books, something Virginia Bell and I have written called the Dementia Bill of Rights. We talk about kind of the basic human rights of people living with dementia and how we can advocate and be supportive of them. So again, let me kind of transition now to just offer some tools for you, okay? So one of the things Era Living's done a very nice job with, and you can do your own version of this if you're still at home. Maybe you have a caregiver who comes in, or you're using a day center. Perhaps they don't have this kind of thing, but make sure you write down some of your family members' life stories. And I like to, not so much focus like on, first elementary school attended or first junior high school, but I like to have some fun, like, is the person with dementia a dog person, cat person, both, or neither? What's their favorite flavor of ice cream? How do they drink their morning beverage? I want somebody to bring me my Starbucks black and bitter, because I like strong black coffee. And I hope someday, if I'm in memory care, they'll at least pour the coffee into a Starbucks cup, right? So I can have that. Again, religion, spirituality, jobs, careers, values. I think this all makes a connection, because you see, again, maybe I'm at home and my father gets confused. He says, I'm late for work, I need to go. Well, I know a lot about my father, so I can say, hey, Dad, I think the game's about to begin. Your favorite football team. Hey, let's sit down and get ready. You don't want to miss that. And I think maybe today's your day off. Oh, okay. But if I know nothing about him, if I'm a paid caregiver and don't know maybe that my mother loved to cook and she was famous for her pumpkin cheesecake recipe, if I know nothing about her, how do I get her away from that door? But again, if I know this life story, I can say, Mom, or I can say, maybe if I'm the paid caregiver, Mrs. Troxel, what's this I hear about your famous recipe for pumpkin cheesecake? Would you teach me how to make it? And you see, you can again get that person away from the door as well. Now, one thing I've recommended to families, and Era Living does a nice job of this, is to create a top 10 card, because we're all busy. And let's say your family member has to go to ER, or there is some kind of family emergency and you have a brand new caregiver who's come in the house, or you move into memory care. You want to have something that's a quick reference for staff. For example, the top 10 things of a best friend was a labor and delivery nurse, an avid gardener, passionate about tulips, grew up on a farm and loves chickens, snow skied until she was 81, family historian, has more than 50 photo albums that she loves looking at, loves talking about her oldest grandson, Jay, who lives in Toronto. Her favorite color is purple. Her favorite treat is chocolate ice cream, someone near and dear to my heart. And she volunteered at the symphony for 25 years. Now, if I'm a director of activities in memory care, or again, I'm a new person helping your family member, wow, is there a lot to work with this card? Talking about nursing, nurses are caring, passionate people, but they're also organized. So maybe again, helping her, get the house shaped up. Gardening, tulips, you can look at tulip catalogs, reminiscing about the farm, chickens. There are probably whole websites now with videos about chickens and stuff about, everyone has chickens at home these days. One of my neighbors has chickens. Spending time looking through her photo albums. Now, again, when you're looking through a photo album, you don't want to say, now, mother, you know who this is, who is it? Or do you remember this? Or do you remember that? If you ask too many questions, they don't know, that causes frustration. But you could say, oh, look, here's Auntie Lulu, wasn't she funny? Or maybe you could even say, look at the interesting hats they were wearing. Does anybody really wear a hat nowadays? And again, have more of these open-ended conversations, okay? Again, talking about the grandson, favorite color purple, serving ice cream, and wow, volunteering at the symphony. Oh my goodness, playing classical music, talking about her favorite operas or symphonies. There's so much to work with, so many rich elements. And this, again, if you have a staff member, very quick connection. And let's say, again, family member has to go to ER. You want to bring this top 10 card with you, because then the staff there can calm them and make a better connection, maybe even before giving an injection or a pill, by talking about things. The staff might even be able to get music into the room, some classical music, which can calm the person and again, foster success with personal care. So just a few things here. I'll just kind of put them all up at once here, if I can get my time here. Whoops, sorry. Best friends communication techniques can benefit residents, families, and caregivers. So a few little tips here for kind of what I call my bag of tricks for caregivers here. Positive body language. Again, remember that words and language are failing. So smiles, hand gestures, hugs that are welcomed and invited. Again, people with dementia, I think, are looking for that friendly face. Offer authentic and frequent compliments. This may seem like an odd one if it's your husband, wife, or partner, but I think we all kind of get exhausted when we're a caregiver. It's tough, emotionally, financially stressful. And you might forget to say, gosh, Dad, what a beautiful red shirt you have on. I really like that shirt, or, Mom, I can't believe you won the Nurse of the Year award in Seattle for 3 different years. You are a wonderful mom and a wonderful nurse. When you give a compliment, it lifts somebody up. And particularly when I train staff, because staff are always so busy, I say, how much time does a compliment take? Just seconds. How much money does it cost? It's free, right? Again, this is a nice way to build a connection. Give some simple choices. People with dementia can understand if we're being a bit too bossy. So instead of saying, here's this sweater, put it on, again, maybe say, Mom, do you want to wear the purple sweater today or the red sweater? Mom, do you want to take your medication now or after lunch? I think people with dementia still have a need to control their destiny, control their lives. And so giving simple choices can be good. And if your family member by chance is just simply too confused, then of course, then you can go to plan B. Mother, the salmon looks so good today. How about enjoying the salmon? Oh, yes, dear, that sounds good. Again, don't ask too many questions. Again, a person with dementia, they often know they don't know because they're in the moment. So if you say, now, Mother, tell me the name of your 3 children you can remember, that can cause a lot of frustration and sadness and is not recommended if you can help it. Try 3 times to turn no into a yes. I've borrowed this with permission from Home Instead. This is part of their training program where they remind us that people with dementia often say no to lots of things. So if you want to get Mom to do something, you might say, Mom, would you like to go to the garden today? Oh no, dear, I'm tired. Now, Mother, those red roses are beautiful. I think you'd enjoy cutting some for the vases. Oh, maybe next time. Now, Mother, you studied so hard to be a certified master gardener. Please come out. I think I need your advice. I don't know if the gardener is pruning those roses quite right. Please give me your thoughts. Oh, okay. All right. A magical phrase, let's say you don't quite understand what's going on, or your family member is maybe talking about things like, their mother and father who've long passed. Somebody say, tell me more about that. Tell me more about your mother. What was she like, or what is she like? You want to go home? Tell me about your home. Do you live in the country or the city? Do you think it's important to do the dishes before you go to bed? Things like that. And then I always say to family members, particularly with later stage dementia where language is really failing, I think just the power of your own words, sitting with somebody, what would I do without you? You're a wonderful family. You're a wonderful mom. It's good to be your friend. I'm so happy to be your best friend. Thank you for all the lessons you've taught me. Affirming language, I think, is really powerful. And this, of course, remains one of my favorite quotes. I'm working on a blog on this right now. Maya Angelou certainly did not write this quote about Alzheimer's disease. It might have been the farthest thing from her mind, but I think it's just the most perfect quote for dementia care, where Maya says, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So again, be more demonstrative. It's tough for some of us. Maybe we've had, maybe we haven't had the best relationship with our mom or dad or brother or sister, but now we're in that caregiving role. I think if you can still be demonstrative, it does help them feel safe, secure, and valued. It's being a best friend, and it does, I think, very much foster cooperation instead of arguing and failure. Now, that being said, the best friends approach won't solve all your problems. I do believe it will never make matters worse, but the person has dementia. There are a lot of symptoms. They can't always follow instructions. They're forgetful. They can get frustrated, angry. They don't always know what's happening around them. There are these delusions, these fixed false ideas. And sometimes it can be very rough and tough to be an effective caregiver. But there's an old saying that, behaviors communicate a message. And we want to always try to kind of be a bit of a detective and kind of figure things out as to what is happening. So when you have a behavioral challenge, look for root causes, triggers. Again, behavior communicates a message. Maybe the person is simply hungry, or they have to go to the bathroom. Maybe you notice there's a lot of agitation after you've had the 5 grandchildren over. So again, perhaps if you can put that together, maybe try to have smaller groups or pick a different time of day for grandkids to come over. We've covered this idea of illness, depression, pain. Medication issues, over medication, under medication. Is there a new medication? Again, I encourage you to review mom and dad's meds with a pharmacist or your family doctor. Now, sometimes people will say, David, my mother does nothing, my mother does nothing, my mother does nothing. But when I quiz them, we discover that, well, she actually does like being outside in the patio on a nice day. She loves animals. She loves country western music. She loves ice cream. And so if there are certain things your family member does enjoy, double down, triple down, quadruple down, really try to add more of these to the mix. I know I do a lot of work these days as a writer and a consultant, and I've been in some companies where they have a happy hour maybe every Friday, and they're usually very popular. And so I've recommended to a number of them, hey, why not do happy hours 2 or 3 times a week, or do an English tea party, or do some other things to kind of foster this socialization. Music, time outdoors, pet therapy can be magic. Be creative and ask some input from your support group or other care partners. We don't really have in-person support groups these days because of the pandemic, but I think we're getting close to having those open back up again. There are a lot of virtual support groups, but I would say that, ask for help from other people who've gone through this. And of course, the life story can give you some clues and inspirations. If your mom was very crafty and made quilts, maybe she can't quite do a quilt anymore, but she might enjoy handling fabric or doing other things like that. So again, be aware, kind of mine that life story for some ideas. And when the going gets tough, it's only human for us to get frustrated and agitate ourselves. Again, practice the best forgiveness you can. When there is a behavior, remember it's the disease, not the person. Okay, so again, best friends approach activities, best friends do things together. I guess what I want to encourage you to do is, even if you're a family member at home, perhaps create a little schedule of activities and things to do, build in some routines, maybe some exercise in the morning, coffee hour, mid-morning. I know in England, I think they used to nickname something called the 11s, where at 11 o'clock they might have tea and a little sweet. So maybe you do your 11s in the morning. But basically, think about I'll start on the right here, the purposeful activities, wrap presents together, match shirts and ties, bake some dog biscuits for the animal shelter. Maybe if your mom loves ice cream, it's still summer, even in the Northwest, there's probably 20 or 30 ice cream shops near you. Start visiting some of them and kind of make a little list and take a photo of mom and you at the ice cream store, make a little Zagat guide or Yelp guide and rate the ice cream, make a note of what you've done, do some fun things like this. And of course, unstructured engagement, these little 30-second moments, singing a song, asking for advice on a recipe, noticing an unusual bird outside, give a hand massage, all these things are fun. Part of the Best Friends philosophy is I call it 30 things to do in 30 seconds or less. And I'm sure my friends at Era Living, there's a handout that they have access to. If you'd like a copy of 30 things to do in 30 seconds or less, ask my friends at Era Living. They can email it to you, I'm sure, or get you a hard copy. Now, again, I feel like in this particular webinar today, I'm kind of covering a few of my favorite things. And one of my heroes is a man who died a couple years ago, Dr. Oliver Sacks, a very famous neurologist who lived in New York. He was originally British. And he's very famous because Robin Williams actually played him in a movie called, I'm just blanking on the word, Awakenings, short-term memory loss here, Awakenings, where Dr. Sacks actually as a medical resident encountered this group of people who had sleeping sickness encephalitis in World War I. He gave them L-Dopa and brought them back to life. So Dr. Sacks was really quite something. And he wrote these beautiful medical histories, short little stories of patients that many of which were published in the New Yorker magazine. And Dr. Sacks did a lot of writing about music. And I love the fact that he talked about dementia. He said, music can lift us out of depression or move us to tears. But for many of my neurological patients, music is even more. It can provide access, even when no medication can, to movement, to speech, to life. For them, music is not a luxury, but a necessity. So make sure your family member has access to lots of music. If they're in assisted living, maybe put one of those Google players or one of those smart speakers so the staff can say, play Frank Sinatra or play this opera. If you're at home, make sure there's music in their bedroom when you're waking them up in the morning, put on nice music. People with dementia in many ways are just like the rest of us. They have all the same needs, emotions, feelings. And when music comes in, it lifts everyone's mood and can be very, very effective in dementia care. Okay, so a few quick examples of the Best Friends approach at work, using creative approaches as staff members or easing and leading to a successful encounter. So perhaps again in memory care at Era Living, they might say, well, he refuses a shower, we can't force him in. But you see when they then look at Best Friends and look at the Best Friends approach and work as a team, they say, oh, well, what if we put some music on, put him in a good space and good mood? And in fact, one of the staff members said, I sing to her in the shower and everything goes better. So a good example of how when you apply this sort of creative approach, you can actually foster success. Using effective communication, a staff member develops a daily ritual of asking residents to help her pick out what scarf to wear today. Again, at Era Living, I think there have been some executive directors I've known or other staff who might have the staff pick out their earrings, have the resident with dementia pick out her earrings, maybe bring in 2 scarves and ask for advice. You can do this at home. Hey, honey, I have this 2 scarves. It's a bit cold out. I want to wear one of the scarves. Which one looks best with this outfit? The blue one or the red one? And asking your family member for advice and ideas. Because when you ask somebody for their opinion, what does it mean? It means you value them. So again, simple things like that. I gave the example earlier, but with my mom, when she was in memory care, I would bring in 5 or 6 dress shirts and neckties on hangers. I'd say, Mom, I've got a busy week at work. You're so good at this. Would you help me match my shirts and ties? And we had a delightful 30 or 40-minute activity. And again, life story work, a really simple example I love to tell actually about my mother. My mother lived in memory care for 3 years in Sacramento, very successfully. And she was Canadian, her parents were British. My mother loved Earl Grey tea with milk. And when the staff would greet her by name, offer her her favorite Earl Grey tea with milk, she felt and thought, they must know me and I must know them. And that definitely helped her relax and feel more calm and better. So again, as we think about, just some activities to do as a best friend, mine their life stories, as that one example had. Maybe your mother has lots of, photo albums, get them out, go through them during the week, write notes, have some fun. Again, as a best friend, remember, don't argue or correct. Do some purposeful chores and activities, wrap presents together, write cards and notes, arrange flowers, do some household chores. I had one friend who sometimes would just spill the poker chips by accident, and the father would spend an hour putting all the different poker chips back by color, or organizing a deck of cards, or organizing a drawer, things like that, and create your own daily rituals like an afternoon tea or daily walks. I'm a big fan of doing things for others, so maybe look up on the web. There's some very simple recipes for dog biscuits, and say, honey, I read the local animal shelter's hurting for money. I don't know what possessed me, but I promise I'd deliver 1,000 dog biscuits this year. Would you help me? And you can bake and cut them out and do them together, maybe even deliver them together. Spend time outdoors, time with children and pets, and offer encouraging words. Again, a little bit of a recap. I can't stress enough to get them outdoors. When you're outside, it's spiritual, it's sensory, it provides natural vitamin D, so very much recommended. So again, a best friend has knack, the art of doing difficult things with ease or clever strategies. So a few examples. Maybe a man living with Alzheimer's disease at home develops a delusion, a fixed false idea that the neighbors have moved the back fence. This actually happened when I lived in Santa Barbara. Instead of arguing, correcting, denying it, honey, oh my gosh, how might this have happened? This is really concerning. I'll talk to the city, we'll work on this, we'll measure, we'll see what we can do about this. In other words, the person with dementia wants to feel that you believe them, even if they have this rather implausible delusion. And of course, if you're calm, you don't, overthink it, you assure the person you're making progress, maybe one day they'll just wake up and boom, it's simply gone. The delusions can often go away on their own. A husband with Alzheimer's refuses to give up his driver's license. Oh my goodness, I think we could spend an hour on each of these examples. Lots of different ideas, but I'll tell you one of my favorites is you turn dad into the DMV, the motor vehicle department, anonymously, which you can do. Let them call him in for a driver's test. Let them be the bad guys and take his driver's license away. And then you say, Dad, I'm so sorry this happened to you. Oh my goodness. But that insurance company, they canceled you too. Dad, I just don't think you can drive anymore. It seems so unfair. I'm really sorry. And you see this way, again, someone else, blame somebody else. Don't just simply argue and correct. Because remember, people with dementia, they lose that ability to reason and figure things out. Your mother's a retired nurse who expresses frustration saying there's nothing to do. Well, again, I have to tell you, one of my favorite, little devices in memory care is getting a clipboard, maybe a $1.99 clipboard, and giving this nurse, your mother, a little to-do list every day. Talk to her about her nursing career. By the way, a clipboard sort of implies authority, and people can hold on to it and walk around with it. So maybe, again, you ask your mother for some healthcare advice, you get things organized. If you're actually in assisted living, the nurse can maybe make rounds with the real nurse, the active nurse, okay? And just have some fun. One of my sayings, I always see a lot of retired nurses in memory care and assisted living, particularly women. That was a big career for many professional women years ago when other careers perhaps weren't as accessible. But I always say, hey, once a nurse, always a nurse. And they laughed at that. Absolutely right. So again, humor, give and take, all part of being a best friends. So remember, try not to become the bad guy, blame the doctor, use some finesse, apologize when things are going wrong. Again, the person with dementia, just like anyone, wants to feel someone is on his or her side. So, if somebody's having a hallucination, there's a big orange cat in my room. This can be a sign, by the way, of something called Lewy body dementia. Don't say, mother, there's no cat there. There's never a cat. You're just imagining that. That hallucination is very real. Mother, oh my goodness, how did that cat get in your room? I'm so sorry about that. I know you don't really like cats. Let me go up there and see what that rascal is up to, and we'll make sure that cat gets the boot, right? And you see, again, you're believing the mother, you're adding some humor and a bit of lightheartedness, that word rascal, and you're calming your mother, and you go back and say, Mom, that cat is gone. There's no cat in the room. Mission accomplished. And again, caregiving with knack allows you to maintain a positive relationship while solving challenges and fostering cooperation and connection. So thank you for letting me share a few ideas and talking about this best friends approach. I do have a website, which you're welcome to explore with free handouts, lots of things like that. I'm on Facebook under Best Friends Approach. You can like that, and I send out lots of articles. This is actually my newest book, which is a professional book, really about the Best Friends Approach and program development. But there's a book I've written called A Dignified Life, the Best Friends Approach to Alzheimer's Care, that one right in the bottom right there. I think Era Living even has a few copies floating around. They might be willing to give you or lend you, but it's inexpensive. It's on Kindle, all of that. Again, Virginia Bell and David Troxel, A Dignified Life, a very easy read with lots of this good information and ideas. Again, thank you, Era Living, for sponsoring this presentation today, and to learn more about their memory care program, here is their website as well. So I think my timing turned out pretty well, I hope, and I'm going to just stop sharing my screen and turn it back to you all and see if there are some questions or comments that I can answer. Again, thank you for this midweek webinar. It feels great to present for my friends in the Northwest.
Thank you, David. That was fantastic as always. So much appreciate your time and joining us. At this time, this would be a good opportunity to go ahead and put your questions in chat if you'd like. So we'll go ahead and wait while you do that. If for some reason you're having difficulty using chat, or you would prefer to take your microphone off take your microphone and unmute it, you would have the option to do that too. It might be easier just to ask David a question that way also, so we can go ahead and try that too. So I'll pause for a minute and wait for some questions to come in chat, or I'll pause for a second now to see if anyone would like to ask a question by taking their microphone off of it.
And thank you, Joan. And just remind people, you can ask a question by holding down your space bar if you're on a laptop, and that will take you off mute as a little bit of a shortcut.
Good reminder, yes. All the tips we learned from all the Zoom meetings we've done. Good. Any questions? Actually, I have one while maybe others are thinking of their questions or typing it in. So this is a question maybe related to someone, of course, that has progressed memory loss, and maybe they're asking about a loved one, maybe a spouse who's passed away, and they seem to be kind of stuck on that subject, and they're asking that question, you know, where is George? Maybe George is their husband, but he passed away a year or so ago. How might you advise on answering something like that, which could potentially be upsetting to someone if they hear that he's passed away?
Well, a couple of things, Joan. That's always a sadness. You know, someone says, where's my husband? And, you know, he's died many years ago or 5 years ago. If it were my own family member and I knew them very well, the first time, Joan, I might take a chance and actually tell them the truth and say, you know, gosh, Mom, you know, Dad passed away. He died about 3 years ago. I just can't believe it. Isn't that something? Do you remember the time he hit that hole-in-one on the golf course? That was maybe his happiest day ever, right? Now, what have I just done? I've told my mother the truth, which might be shocking or jarring to her. She may not remember that he passed away, but I've kind of planted a happy memory. Remember when he hit that hole-in-one on the golf course? And as much as she might be sad and upset and distressed about his death, that maybe in her mind she's hearing for the first time, you see, I've planted a happy memory, and maybe we will have a few tears and upset, but then begin to talk about his golf game. So it's okay to be authentic, particularly the first time or two something happens. But an hour later, if she says, where's Fred, or something like that, or where's Bob, I think I would go to plan B and maybe just say, tell me more about him. And, you know, gosh, where do you think he might be? And, you know, how did you all meet? I never asked you, Mom, why did you decide to marry Dad? Oh, he was a very good dancer. Well, I never knew that. What kind of dancing did you do? Sometimes when you say, tell me more about that, and lead the conversation, you end up in a better place where they feel heard, but you kind of end up in a happier place. So those are just a couple of thoughts I have. What I would say not to do is just boldly lie and embellish. Oh, he's at Walmart. He's in aisle 7. I'm sure he's shopping. He'll be back soon. That's very treacherous, because they will remember things like that. And you want to recognize that you'll begin to lose your credibility. Again, a challenging situation, but one that I hope we can handle with empathy. I saw one question, Joan, come in about activities for people in wheelchairs. You know, again, I think you can be very involved. Hopefully get them outdoors, take a daily walk with them. They might enjoy pet therapy, something in their lap. Music, very powerful. I think, again, trivia and word games. It's amazing how my mother-in-law has Alzheimer's disease, and she's actually in memory care in Sacramento. And she knows all, you say Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and up and down, salt and pepper, black and white, spelling bees. There's a lot of really cool even word games and trivia games. And I sometimes say, hey, Mom, let's do some brain aerobics and let's work on our brains. And that works out well.
That's great. Thank you. Looks like we have another question that came in. I'm going to go ahead and read this one. It says, I had to be the bad guy and take away her car keys when my dad went to the hospital. He's been the driver and caretaker. She also tried to leave the house yesterday when one of the caretakers was at the house. What would you recommend to help explain why they can't drive?
So, okay, driving, of course, is huge because, again, remember we talked about empathy. Well, what does driving represent for all of us? Freedom, right? Autonomy. None of us really want to give up our cars, but sometimes we know we have to, right? So again, in this case, I think I would try not to be the bad guy and say, Mom, I'm so sorry, but your driver's license expired. It's tough, but when you get older, sometimes the state won't let you drive because you just have poor vision and, you're not doing all that well. I'm really sorry, but, without that license, Mom, we could be in a world of trouble if you get into an accident. So I just don't think it's possible for you to drive right now. So something like that. So be honest, be authentic. And I will say there's something called in our field redirection. And because they're forgetful, maybe you can, again, distract them with some ice cream, doing a different activity. Maybe even say, Mother, we have a lot to do right now. Why don't we go for a drive a little later today? And sometimes that can work as well. I saw another question come in. What if somebody can't bring their beloved cat into residential care? Oh, it's tough. A lot of places are pet friendly, but it is a problem though, because, and this sounds like a terrible story, but I was actually at a building a few months ago and they did allow people to bring cats and dogs in. And there was one resident who didn't like cats and he kicked the woman's cat and he would kick it. So that was a big problem. They couldn't, have the cat be abused. So in this case, they allowed the cat to, be in the person's room. And of course, the other piece of it is the residents. Sometimes they don't have good judgment, so they'll overfeed a cat or not care for the dog properly. So I'd say it's case by case. If you have a family member who's very devoted to their cat, certainly talk to the building, find out their rules, see if they can make some exceptions, give it a short period of time. And see what you can do. Now, let's say you really want Mom to be, at a building that's maybe right around the corner from you, and they don't allow pets, because some places simply don't. I would say it's probably 60-40 that most places don't really encourage pets in memory care. It's tough to say, but I've seen it where someone moves in, they might miss their animal for a few weeks, but they're so in the moment, they're so forgetful that after a week or two, they may not have that memory. Of course, everyone's different. It's sort of sad for me because I love cats, but again, sometimes those are the tough decisions you have to make. And what's great is many companies, even if they don't allow pets, have a lot of visiting animal programs, things like that. So yeah, certainly talk to the building, see if you can work around it, try it on a pilot basis. But those are just some ideas I have. There is a lot of discussion among the groups I've worked with over the years about pets. And there are good and bad reasons for pets not to be, there are good ideas and challenging ideas about why an animal may not be the best thing in a memory care neighborhood, but some do allow it.
Thank you. I'm going to pause for just a second just to see if there's anyone who's maybe taken themselves off of mute who would like to voice a question instead of using chat.
The question is from Costello. David, does someone in memory care at an advanced stage of Alzheimer's, do they feel uncomfortable with multiple visitors? Is a one-on-one situation a better plan, and especially with someone who doesn't recognize pictures of her children or other family
Sure.
members?
Okay, that's a very thoughtful question. And let me tackle it this way. You know, everybody is a bit different. And I've always been hesitant to kind of offer a blanket rule for everything, right? So let's say, for the sake of argument, 3 or 4 family members visit at once. Just try to observe. Does it seem to be something that she's happy about, where maybe all the hubbub and activity is sort of pleasing? Can you feel that she's stressed out, or that, you know, the body language, you know, she's getting upset or stressed? So I wouldn't be afraid to have a little family reunion or have the 3 grandkids over. Again, maybe do a project, maybe take her out in the patio, you know, bring some flowers to arrange, or do some fun, or bring the friendly dog in to visit. But I think you're onto something that certainly later stage, some people do much better with a sort of smaller group, a more calm visit, sitting, holding someone's hand, talking with them. I will say with my mom, toward the end of her life, I noticed that she loved it when my dad or I would just go to her room and just sit with her. So sometimes I would actually sit and read a book, even for an hour or two, just by her side, reading her book. We weren't doing a lot of activity, but I think my very presence calmed her. So again, a little bit of advice there. I think it just depends on the person, but you'll probably sense it even if someone's later stage, if really that's just too much activity. But one-on-one is always great.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, and I think we could go on with questions for hours and hours, but we are unfortunately out of time for today. If you do have other questions, though, that you didn't have an opportunity to ask, again, feel free to reach out to either team, either at Ida Culver House Broadview or the Gardens at Town Square. We can get those questions to David and get you connected with your answers to those questions. So we're gonna wrap this up for today, and we're gonna be next emailing everyone an evaluation form that we would really love for you to take the time to complete, to give us feedback on this presentation and even share ideas about other topics that you might be interested in. We do hope to see you all again for the next presentation that we have. This would be the 4th of our series of 5 with David. That will be on August 25th, and we'll learn about successful transitions to memory care on our next talk. So again, I am Joan Retman, Area Community Relations Director here at the Gardens at Town Square. This concludes today's presentation. Thank you again for joining us. Have a wonderful day, and thanks again, David.
Take care. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.